Welcome to the Dr. Dance Mom podcast, your guide to strong dancers with a bright future. I'm your host, Dr. Tara Christensen, doctor of physical therapy, dance medicine specialist, and proud dance mom. Let's dive into today's episode. Hello and welcome back to the Dr. Dance Mom podcast. On today's episode, we're going to talk a little bit about studio culture. On our last episode, I did an interview with the director of a film about abuse in the ballet industry, which made me think about my own daughter and some of the things that go on in the competition industry. The thing is, for parents who come into this blind, they have no idea what types of things their kids could face and don't have the opportunity to have discussions about it. What's worse is that shows like Dance Moms that are so popular glorify some of these issues and people start to think that it's just a normal part of the dance world. I want to have a conversation about this because I absolutely don't want my daughter thinking that certain things are okay or acceptable and to end up with trauma from her time as a dancer. I want to discuss negative studio culture in this episode and specifically identify things that go on within studios that should typically not be tolerated. Don't worry, this will be followed by an episode on positive studio culture as well and how it helps dancers flourish not just in dance but in life. I see posts all the time, anonymous parents questioning, is this normal, or debating leaving their studio. And when I read the detail of the situation, some of the time, my jaw is literally on the floor, that they would, either think that that's normal or continue to, trust some of these people with their child. And I realize that making the decision to leave a studio is not easy at all. So that doesn't come from a place of judgment, but rather that any of these behaviors have somehow been so normalized that they're not questioned until it affects our child's mental health. It's also worth noting while on this topic that dance teachers don't necessarily have any sort of required training to teach our children. It's not like our school teachers who undergo formal schooling and get certified and all of the things that come along with that. There's also no real governing body to speak in competition dance, so nobody's really policing studios. So a lot of this does fall on the parents and the people that are participating in competition dance. So today we're going to do a deep dive into some things that parents should be aware of and are absolutely not normal things within a studio's culture. So just highlighting some of the signs to look at and potentially to think about looking elsewhere for your child's dance training. Today I'm joined by my friend, former dancer and dance mom, Angel Miller, who will join the discussion and add some of her own wisdom from experiences she's had with her daughter in the competitive dance world. Angel, will you please introduce yourself, tell our listeners a little bit about who you are and, kind of your experience as well.
Hi, so sure. My name is Angel. I am a dance mom. I grew up dancing. I started dancing at the age of 2. I did it all. I did rec dancing, competition dance. I danced on my high school's dance team. I did a little bit of college. And then just from there, got a job. I started working in radiology, switched over to fitness, and that's where I'm at now. I do have a daughter. I have 4 kids actually, but only one dances. Thank goodness, because I don't know that I could handle more than one dancer. It's a lot. But we have a very busy life and dance takes up a lot of that. So it's very important to me and to my family that all of my children, but dance especially, that they're in a safe environment that's positive and that's going to help them later on in life. So this is a great topic and I'm excited to kind of talk about it.
Yeah. So I want to start out by talking about who creates the culture in the studio, because I think that's a great place to start.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
I think for me, it starts at the top with the studio owner. It's their business, their livelihood. Ultimately, they should be in control of what happens within those 4 walls that they're kind of in control of. And, if things go unchecked, for me, ultimately, it's a sign that they either don't want to handle it or maybe are unwilling to set boundaries or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I totally agree. I think dance is a business anyway. Like maybe you don't want to see it that way, but it is. The studio owner is the CEO of that business. So they are in charge of everything, from the time the person steps in the door, every interaction, any decision that is made, any rule that's put in place, that is all on them. And it's a big job and it's tough. And I do give a lot of leniency to that because it can be overwhelming at times. So you also need to make sure too that you are surrounding yourself with staff that also has that same, it's your vision, right? You have to have a vision, and you have to make sure everybody's on board with that in order for it to work. So it definitely starts from the top and then is like a trickle effect all the way down into not only staff, but the parents, the students, everybody that's involved, the support staff, people who are, in there doing all the little things. It's a big team effort. So you have to make sure that, you are clear in what you expect and what you want. And you have to make sure that the rest of your staff, students, anyone that's involved, is on the same page.
Yeah, I think that buy-in is super important on all sides. So just to kind of echo what you said, parents can certainly affect the culture, either a group of parents or an individual parent. Same thing with dancers, either a group or an individual dancer can definitely have a negative effect at times on the entire, culture of the studio environment. So I think that that's something that definitely needs some awareness and policing at times. So, just good points in terms of kind of just acknowledging where that comes from.
Right.
So in terms of thinking about different things in terms of studio culture that might affect a dancer. So I think this is kind of the meat and potatoes of the topic. And, a lot of information I tend to see on different online forums, just doing research on topics like this, or even just in the day-to-day, like things that you come across online. And so some of the things that I, have kind of gathered here in terms of prompts are, based on some of the feedback that I've seen or conversations I've had with other people, certainly parents of dancers that I'm working with and things like that too. So one of the things that I wanted to touch on here is words that are used when correcting dancers in class. So that can have a big effect on the trickle-down culture of the studio, just in terms of the effect on the dancer. So those words definitely stay with the dancer. They become a big part of their internal belief system and how they view themselves as a dancer and as an individual. But things like, passive aggressively correcting a dancer in front of their peers, or just making comments or asking them, if they want to be there or if they want to go dance elsewhere, telling them they're lazy or, things like that. So, I don't know. I think that that's like a big one for me. That's kind of something that I would say shouldn't necessarily be commonplace.
Yeah, it shouldn't be. And it is. And, when you talk about studio culture, for me, the definition of that is kind of like the vibe, right?
Right.
It's that feeling you get when you walk into that place. And it the minute that you get there. It's that gut feeling that you have. And if that child is walking in to this class and being met with that kind of talk, that is going to change the vibe of your culture, of your studio. So and I know it's hard. I know that there's this tough love. Some teachers use that as a way to motivate. And that does work for some kids, but most of the time it doesn't. So I think that teachers really need to be aware of what they are saying. Their words hold a lot of weight, and they really need to be conscious of what they are saying before it actually leaves their mouth.
Yeah. A couple other things that I had noted here was just like, even just things like making jokes. So I think sometimes that gets taken out of hand as well. So even like within the classroom, making a joke toward a dancer, maybe that you think is kind of like funny and you're playfully like, bantering with them. But if it's not something that's entirely positive and other kids are observing that or mimicking that outside of the classroom, that I think definitely can come off as a little bit of or it can snowball into a little bit of like almost like a bullying situation. And maybe people
Yeah.
don't perceive it as that, but the dancer internally definitely can feel that,
Yeah.
feel ganged up on.
I mean, they need to realize the weight of their words. They need to realize also who are they talking to? Do they know this child? Do they know, are there some things going on internally or that they don't know about, that you're saying these things and you think it's funny, but there's a situation going on in the child's life that maybe that child is internalizing it in a different way. Like as this adult, you have this responsibility to know, what is happening in your child's lives before you're going to dish out some sort of comment, criticism, joke, or whatever. Because like I said, some kids may be fine with it, but you may have a child who suffers from anxiety. You may have a child who is, going through some sort of abusive, situation. You may have a child who is being bullied at school, and that's compounding now. And you are someone that they trust. And now that adult that they trust is now kind of saying these same things. That snowballs. That leads to a lot of other issues that you don't necessarily want to have like an 8, 9, 10-year-old dealing with.
Yeah. And I think that's an important point about, you never know what's going on outside of the studio. I know for my daughter had a period of time where, things weren't going great for her at school. She was having a few issues, and the dance studio is really like her safe place. She doesn't dance with anyone that goes to her school, and that's the beauty of it. It's the ability for them to have another place that they can go that's outside of maybe things that are happening at school. They have a different friend group, and they have this different support system.
It's their escape.
They can escape to. Typically, they're in class, they're dancing, they're doing something they love, and they're with peers, hopefully, that are lifting them up, right? And supporting them in that way.
Hopefully, yes.
So, and teachers and adults around them that are helping to support them as well. So really, anything that degrades that environment in the slightest, I think is just something that people need to be aware of.
Yes.
Another thing that I do want to bring up in terms of words and things like that, is just sometimes the way that kids are addressed if they're not retaining corrections. And so I've had some people come to me based on what I do, with questions about certain things, and with the experience that, the child has been accused of maybe not trying hard enough or not paying attention in class and things like that because they're not retaining some of the corrections. And then when I work with them, what I find is that maybe they don't have the physical facility to maintain that correction. It's not that they're not trying. It's not that they're not listening or paying attention. It's that their body, based on their status at that moment in time, they either don't have the flexibility or the strength, or maybe even the ability to acknowledge which muscles need to work at the right time, right? The timing to be able to coordinate those movement patterns or to get there. And so I think there's a bigger piece to that where that should be acknowledged as well, in terms of, maybe this child just needs a little bit different approach. Maybe they need a different cue. Maybe they need some sort of supplemental something to help them be able to find that. So, I think there's a distinction there. Like, you can probably usually tell when someone's trying and when they're not trying, right? So I'm not acknowledging that doesn't happen. But at the same time, I think it does need to be kind of looked at a little bit differently in some situations.
Absolutely. And this goes back to making sure that your teachers are qualified.
Yeah.
A lot of times you go into studios and it may just be like a former dancer that's teaching the class. You don't know if these teachers are doing continuing education. Right. You don't know what training they are doing outside of teaching. So, it's very important that you have teachers that can understand and that know how to teach to the different levels. There are some children who have attention disorders. There are some children who, like you said, have some spatial awareness issues, muscle imbalances, things like that. And there are some kids that maybe just don't understand. Maybe the move needs to be broken down a little bit more than what it is. And I understand that studios are always on a time limit. Time is precious. There's no time to pull the child aside. But if you want to be a successful studio and create a positive culture, you need to make that a priority. If you see that a child is struggling, don't call them out in the middle of it. Wait till after class, pull them aside, maybe say, hey, I see you struggling. I want to help. Set up something, even if it's just 1 minute, to maybe show them. Maybe record a video, break it down, set up a time where they can come in 10 minutes early. There has to be something that you can do. So as a teacher, you need to be aware of that. And not everybody is the same. This is not a cookie cutter, we're all just replicas of the same kid. I mean, how boring would that be? Right.
Exactly. From an artistry standpoint as well.
Yeah, I'm sure. Super easy to teach. It makes your job as a teacher very easy, but very boring. So
yeah. And I think that's a great lead into another piece of this, and that's, favoritism within studios. So to your point about, making sure that each student is getting what they need as an individual, that can be really challenging in a larger studio setting for sure, when there's a lot of students. Mm-hmm. But I think making resources available to all students is important. So on that note, in terms of, as I mentioned, favoritism, there are certain situations that I've heard where in some studios, not every dancer has access to privates. And on top of that, studios will sometimes limit or prohibit outside instruction. So to me, that's something that creates a culture of only certain students are nurtured, right? And others are less important.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's a huge problem.
You hear it a lot. You can go on those Facebook groups and it's every other comment is something about, and favoritism is really so broad, right? Like right. What one person perceives as favoritism is really maybe a child who worked really, really hard and got rewarded. Yes. It's so subjective. So I hate it when people always bring up this topic of favoritism when it comes to things like that. When it comes to children having learning opportunities, that needs to be something that is given to every child. And if you cannot make that happen, you either need to find a way or you need to allow these children to go get the help from someone else. And that is tricky too, because you don't want your kid just going to some random person to get some help. But help them find a place or
have a list
some
of
instruction
resources
from somewhere. Yes. So there's a million, and not all are great, I will admit, but like there's a billion online virtual courses, teachers, and some are great, some are not. You have to really do your research. But as the head of your studio, if you want certain results and you notice that a child isn't getting there and they're trying, then there needs to be something provided for them. And it is not fair if it's this person can do it, but this person cannot, because then that is favoritism, and that does not look good.
Yeah. And I think, as someone who's a business owner myself, I think it's just important to note that a dance studio owner, that's their wheelhouse, right? So the dance world in general is very small. I've learned that just, being in this portion of my career just in dance medicine, right? So the resources are out there, and I feel like most people can have easy access to those resources or can easily vet them. So yes. I think what I'm trying to say here is that as a studio owner, you have to recognize that your parents, your customers, right? The parents are the ones paying the bill. If they're looking for direction and you can't provide what they need, then it's very easy for that studio owner to compile a list of vetted resources that they can provide to their parents, right? To say, this is what I recommend. Like, for example, geographically where we live, we are very close to New York City. There are a bunch of places that offer just class that kids can go take without you needing to worry about, them leaving the studio. Because I get that that's probably a concern, right? You don't want to lose a customer. But at the same time, there are other resources out there that can be provided. And as a customer, as a parent, I would be so much more appreciative if I was offered those resources, and that would honestly make me more loyal to the studio I was at, just to know that they were willing to help and to provide those resources. So I don't know. I just think that that exclusion is a big issue.
Yeah, I think it says a lot about you too, as a studio owner, if you are unable or unwilling to provide options. Yes, are you worried that your student might leave? What is that saying about you? You are not confident enough to retain this student. It says a lot of things if you're not willing to do it as well. And if you are not there's always someone willing to help. So if you're not willing to do it, someone else will, and you may lose that student anyways. Yeah. So it really is in your back. And listen, all you're doing is, you've put your trust in this student. You've given them help. They are now trusting you to find help for them. That's going to make their bond stronger. They're going to be like, this teacher listened to me. She offered me help and guidance, and now I am a better dancer because of it. And you will most likely retain that student because you went that little extra step further to show that you care and that you are invested in their future as a dancer.
Yeah. And I think, kind of switching gears a little bit, another thing along those same lines, but quite different, is just fostering an environment of like competitiveness between the dancers. So I think sometimes that favoritism piece that we just talked about can really stem from having, certain dancers who maybe traditionally do better competitively, right? And trying to like help them maintain that status per se. So in terms of like, negative culture, I would say if you're noticing that within the studio, that there's those opportunities or those private lessons are only offered to the dancers that typically do better at competitions. Because let's face it, to be very blunt here, there are studios like that really just, they care about their image. They want to be able to showcase that their student won, whatever title, like,
triple platinum, diamond. Yeah.
Like whatever. And so, and that's important to them, but that might not be the right environment for your kid. So, I think if you find yourself in that situation and you're recognizing like, my child is not going to be that kid. They're not interested in working that hard. Maybe this is more of like a fun thing for them. They want to compete, but like they're not interested in being that competitive. Or maybe they do need some extra help in some way and they're not getting it there, and they're not going to get there without that extra piece. I think people are very afraid to challenge that and to say, to bring that up and to say, hey, like this child needs something else, because they're afraid of potential repercussions. And so that's another thing that I've noticed a lot of people have spoken out about in private forums. I think people are afraid to say these things publicly, but part of my mission is to acknowledge that these things exist, right? I think acknowledgement so that people can feel like, oh, I'm not alone in this. I am not the only one that's experiencing this. But if being afraid to go to a studio director or a teacher with those concerns, to me, is like a huge red flag that culture is not a positive one. If you can't have a conversation, or if you're afraid that conversation is going to negatively impact your child in that environment, or that there will be some sort of retaliatory, like, we're going to take your solo away, because I've heard of that happening. That is absolutely, and those are the things that blow my mind. When I said in the intro, there's some things that have my jaw on the floor, and I'm kind of wondering, like, how do you even go back? And again, it's not from a place of judgment. It's from a place of how could anyone think that that's a normal thing or accept
What's
that as
crazy is that for some reason in the dance world, we put up with and accept things that are completely unacceptable. Like if your school teacher did this,
right,
they would not have a job anymore.
No.
If a high school coach, did some of these things, like they would not be able to coach anymore. If you were in any job, any professional job, if you did some of these things, like it would not be okay. So I don't know why we let these people treat children this way. It's crazy to me. I don't understand it. I always hear, oh, but my kid loves it and they don't want to leave and it's great. But like, do they? Like, do they, when they come out crying every day, like, do they still love it? Because you can love dance somewhere else where you won't leave crying every day. It's shocking to me to hear some of the things, like you said on the forums, and you read some of them, and you are in charge of your child. Your child, who is 9 years old, cannot make the mature decision that this is bad for my mental health, this is bad for my physical health, this is bad for ABC, like all these things.
Right.
You need to step in and not tolerate it, because you're setting that child up for future situations like this.
Yeah. To accept it as normal.
Yeah. Like, do they want to go be in a job where they're belittled or bullied into doing something, or, told, oh, well, if you don't do this the way I want. In relationships, it carries over into so many other aspects of life as they get older. So I don't understand parents allowing their children to go through these things of retaliation or being afraid to talk to another person about something that is affecting your child. Like, it blows my mind. If I walk into a studio and I have politely asked for a conversation to have a conversation with someone in their time. Like, I'm not going to walk into class and be like, I need to talk to you right now. But if I have sent an email and said, hey, I would love to discuss something, can you please set up a time? If you can't do that, that is a huge, huge red flag. If they can't do it in a adult manner, if the conversation is met with passive aggressiveness or sarcasm or, more threats, that is, you don't solve problems that way. I don't know. It's one of those things. I see it, I hear it. It's crazy to me. It's unacceptable. And as parents, we need to, it starts with us. It really does.
Yeah, it does. And I think this is a really tough topic because, like I said, I feel like this is discussed constantly, but behind closed doors. Nobody wants to take this out in the open. And I feel like it is. It's a slippery slope, right? So understanding that there's two sides to every coin, right?
Of course.
And not discounting either one of them. But I feel like based on, again, stemming from the conversation I had with John regarding the Unbound documentary, it really just brought to light in my mind all of the things that people tend to normalize because they're just things systemically that have always occurred. And I think it's spilled over into the competition world. And I think based on what I understand, of course, I was not a competition dancer, but based on what I understand from other people's experiences and what they've told me, and maybe you can speak to this, competition dance today is not the same as it was 20 years ago. And
no way.
I think that also needs to be recognized. We're not comparing apples to apples here. There are things systemically that have evolved in that space that people need to start acknowledging and parents need to be aware of. And I think if you're in one of those environments, where what is your point of reference, right? Where are you getting your information from? Dance moms?
Right. Well, and the problem is too, is I feel like when you put your child in dance, they're what, 5, 4, 3, like they're young, right? And like 2, I started my daughter's, but when you look for a dance studio, you're literally looking for something that's close by.
Yep.
And something that has a class in the time frame that you have available, right? You're not starting dance for your 3-year-old to be like, they're going to be on Broadway, so I need to get them into all of this stuff. So your level of research is really like non-existent. It consists of like you going on like the Facebook group in your town asking what is the best dance studio for whatever. That's how you pick your studio, to be honest. And then as your kid gets older and then there's maybe more opportunities, you stay because you're there and it's easy. Even though the goals and everything has changed, you haven't really done the research to see, does this studio that was fine for my tiny ballerina class, is it the same type of environment if I want my daughter to be a competition dancer? Parents especially, most parents don't know. They were not dancers. They don't know what to look for. They don't know what questions to ask. They don't know what behaviors are normal or not normal. So, and at that time, you're already in the studio. So you're like, why bother? But it really is an important piece that parents need to start doing. And it might be a bummer to leave after you've been somewhere for like 2 or 3 years, but it's better to do it then than wait until they've been there for a few years and they're in it and then they're damaged or whatever the issue may be that is really going to cause you to leave. So it really does start with parents doing research, and there needs to be, because like you said, this dance world is not governed or regulated by everything. It's a free-for-all. So, you really do have to, it would be nice if there was just like a list, right? Like check this, read this, ask this. There are things you can do. It's just, you have to be willing to like put in the time.
Yeah. And I think also, by that point, especially if your dancers like get into the competition space, right, with a studio, and then you're finding out all of these things or you're seeing all these red flags. At that point, they've got friends. You probably
they're already invested. Yeah.
So you're invested that way, and it can be really difficult to make that switch. And we're not here to minimize any of that, because I understand that that's a very difficult decision to make. However, if you're seeing some things change with your dancers' mental health, if they're not wanting to go to class, if they're coming out of the studio crying every time they go to dance, if they're losing interest in dance, when they previously absolutely loved it, and that they're in their heart they love dance. Those are things that should really cause a pause and to say, maybe this isn't a healthy environment anymore. Maybe these things are really affecting my child. They can make new friends.
Yeah, exactly. Your child doesn't have that mental capacity at that age to explain that to you.
No.
They are feeling a certain way, and they don't know why, and they don't know how to fix it, and they don't know if it's okay or not, and they're not going to say anything. So again, like, you need to know your child. You need to pay attention. You need to see all of those things that you said. Are they not eating? Are they not sleeping? Are they withdrawn? Are they more emotional than they normally are? Do they not want to go to dance class anymore? All those things you said. You really have to pick up on that. And it needs to be a conversation you have for your child, but you cannot let them solely make the decision.
Right.
Because you are their protector. You are the one that needs to be looking out for them. So if you're seeing all of these things and you do nothing, at some point it's going to come back to get you, and you're going to have a lot of guilt, and you're going to have a child that has a lot of issues that they now need to deal with.
Yeah. And I think coming back from a lot of that, it's possible, but it may take the joy out of dance, or it may, there's kids that quit altogether, like when they get to high school, right? Because by that point they're burned out because they've been dealing with some of these things for years, maybe at this point. or they've just been in an unhealthy environment and they discover a sport or something else or school activities that, hey, this is actually fun. Like,
Right.
I didn't realize that dance wasn't fun anymore.
Right. Or you've come to the realize, like, this is not your end game.
Right.
So you're
That
investing so much time and money into something that you love, but in the end, it's not, you don't want to be on Broadway. You don't want to go to school for it. It's just something that you wanted to do for the love of it. And you kind of are like, you know what? It's a lot of time. It's a lot of mental, it's draining. I'm going to go find something else that is maybe geared more toward what I'm looking for. And that's fine too.
Yeah.
The most important thing is to recognize it. And if your kid can recognize it, that's huge. Most of them can't until they are older. But usually the signs are there.
Yeah. And I want to get back to the culture piece a little bit, just in terms of like some red flags. I mean, like I said, I think just looking for a studio and recognizing red flags immediately, I think that's really difficult. Maybe that's, something we could discuss at another time in terms of like what things to immediately look for. But I think in terms of like once you're established in a place, these are things that you can look for to say, are these some warning signs that maybe this is not the optimal place, even if it's not affecting your child in the immediate moment? All of this stuff does tend to trickle down, and your child could have like a wonderful year, but maybe the next year they're affected by it. So I think just being aware in general of some of these things. So things to observe, and I want to kind of go through a little bit of a list here. But the first is no sense of community within the studio as a whole. And I think this is pretty easy to recognize once you've been in a place for a while. You can kind of tell what you said vibe earlier. And I think that's like the vibe of the studio. It's a great word.
Right.
Because you can tell, are the parents conversing with one another? Are parents from different levels conversing with one another? Do they know who the older dancers are? Do they know who the younger dancers are? Is that sense of community there? Do the teachers foster that sense of community? The parents and the dancers as well. If there's a lot of clickiness, there's groups of people that tend to gravitate towards one another. I'm not going to deny that, right? But if there are like these high school type mean girl cliques, right? And it happens where there's a lot of like whispering and gossip within the groups. Not a healthy environment, right? And I'm not talking about like productive or like conversations about concerns within the studio. Sometimes, parents will kind of ask somebody else's opinion. Am I overreacting about this? Or has this been your experience, just to kind of get a lay of the land? Talking about just like, actual gossip. Those sorts of things, that would be kind of a red flag, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's literally nothing worse than an adult talking about a child. So anytime I hear that or see that, it's such a red flag. I just want to turn around and run away. Like, it's just so incredibly inappropriate. And if you are seeing that, groups of moms doing that, it's like a big ick. And you just hate to see that. But if you're seeing that, that's a little warning sign.
Yes, exactly. Another thing is just creating a culture of competitiveness. And we kind of alluded to this earlier, but really, if you're noticing that like some of these kids are being intentionally pitted against one another, like with their solos, in a way that not just they happen to be competing against each other because they both like the same genre and they happen to be the same age, but like you can tell based on how things are assigned that it's strategic in some way. Huge red flag there, because that's only, even if the kids are initially friendly or if they're friends, that inches its way in. And eventually it's going to create some sort of rift, especially if winning is prioritized. So I feel like that is another huge one. But it's subtle, but you can recognize it.
And it's tough, too, because when you're in a bigger dance studio, you are going to be competing against your friends.
Of course.
Like, that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
These age groups are all over the place. There's a 99% chance that you are competing against your friends.
Yeah.
And that's just how it is.
Yep.
The problem starts to be when it's, I got this only because, like, or you got this because,
Yes.
like, I messed up, or, I got this and I'm amazing because I got triple diamond extravaganza. Like, like when the things are actually being called out to the teammates, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Like, teach your children to win and to be humble and to be supportive
Yes.
to your team, because you didn't get there by yourself.
Right.
You got there through working as a team.
Yes.
So, that's the other thing as parents. Like, we need to teach our children some humility also, like in these situations, because I feel like that is a lot of it too. And a lot of it stems from the parents too. Like, if the parents
Oh, yeah.
are acting a certain way, the child is going to act that way.
Yeah.
Whereas, if groups of parents are supportive of everyone, they're cheering and clapping, they're hugging, they're congratulating, whether or not you got double diamond platinum or you got, silver or whatever, like, there's equal joy for everybody.
Yes.
And
that's a huge
yes, congratulations. You did amazing. You got first place. So proud of you. But you also are proud of everyone else too. Like,
and I think that leads me to another point that I was going to bring up, is that, berating like an individual dancer for maybe a misstep, or if they, heaven forbid, forgot a tiny piece of choreography in like a group, or, definitely witnessed things where, dancers have come off stage and they're visibly upset because they know that they messed up. And then, the teacher, the adult, the choreographer, whoever's there, does not make it any easier for them. And just, kind of using inflammatory language or raising their voice or being visibly angry because somebody, kind of misstepped or forgot a piece of choreography. Especially, like using profanity or anything else towards a child. Like, all of those things, I mean, that is absolutely not normal and should not be tolerated. But I think in those situations, it's hard to get up on stage, especially at a young age, and perform. And some kids are more apt to it. Some are natural performers. Some need to work at it a little bit. Some get nervous or have like anxiety getting on stage. And so I think they should be sensitive to that. And then, if group members or teammates are if they're seeing the adult get angry at the child who maybe messed up, what's the rest of the team going to do? They're going to follow suit, and they're going to, not let that child forget about that mistake that they made that maybe cost them, first place overall or whatever. Right. It's just really unhealthy.
Yeah. And to whoever is listening and whoever needs to hear this, the moment they get off stage is not ever the time. No. It is not ever the time to give correction, to place blame. It never is. So if you're doing it, stop. That is the time for support and appreciation and encouragement, because it is terrifying. As adults, most of us could not get up on stage and go dance in front of hundreds of people. And we're having our young children do this. Mm-hmm. And
for an
that
award,
in itself,
for a ranking.
Yeah, for an award.
For a ranking.
Like, they are being judged
against their peers.
Yeah. So like I don't want to be judged by anybody. No. But we are literally paying and sending our children up to be judged and critiqued and all of these things. Yeah. When they do that, whether they did amazing or whether they did horribly, when they come off that stage, it's a hug, it's a pat on the back, it is a reassuring word. Wait till you get back to the studio in a private setting to go over maybe what could have gone better, what do we need to do to prepare better next time. It's not a blame game. it's a different person every time. Like
Everybody makes mistakes.
yeah, and you do have children who are super anxious, and it could be they had a bad morning.
Yep.
They didn't sleep well at night.
Yep.
They don't feel well,
They didn't
which
have a good breakfast.
how many kids do we shove up on stage with the flu and strep throat and like
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, because that's another point that I was going to bring up as well.
I'm just like keeping it. But it's you're putting so much pressure on these kids. The minute they get on stage is not the time to berate them.
Yeah.
It's not.
And so good lead into one of my last points here. And so one other thing I wanted to bring up, and we could go on forever with this, I feel. There's a lot of examples, but one of the biggest ones for me, and you as well, you're very health and wellness conscious, which is, part of the reason why I wanted you to be on this episode as well, because you understand the 360 view of this. Our dancers are small humans, right? They're not just dancers. We're not looking at like a robot that we're just sticking on stage, right? There's so many factors that influence their day to day and who they are as a human being, right? But having them or making them, forcing them to dance like sick or injured. And so this is something that drives me crazy. And I obviously, based on what I do, right? I'm a dance medicine physical therapist. I'm always going to advocate for the health and wellness of these kids. But there are certain studio environments that will penalize dancers for not dancing when they're sick or injured. And I think we need to obviously understand, like, again, there's two sides of the coin. There are some kids who will say that they have, they're sick or they can't dance or whatever because maybe they just don't want to that day and they're not truly sick or injured. Like, I think there needs to be like a designation here, right? Or
right.
But I'm talking about they're actually sick, and they're
like a sniffle is different than the flu. Like,
right. If they have a fever, they should be in bed. If they're throwing up, they shouldn't be puking in a trash can and then going on stage. Like, things like that. I know. Like we get the on to them for calm season, right? Already, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And there's been. It's documented in these Facebook groups.
We've all seen it. We have all seen it.
Was anybody else at XYZ competition this weekend? And like, is your kid sick with like the stomach flu? And then there's like 50 responses. Like, yep. Like we all have it.
No, but like we've all seen it. We've all been to those competitions where there's a kid throwing up in the bathroom and then going on
stage. And to that point, okay, to be fair, some kids have really severe anxiety that may cause them to get sick before going on stage. So that is a thing. It does happen, right?
It is.
But if your kid has other GI symptoms and it's not anxiety, like they should be staying home. And yeah, I know it's an inconvenience and like the teachers have to reblock the number or put in an understudy or something, but like all of that can be worked out. Like these kids, they need to be healthy, right?
Yes.
So, it's not convenient by any stretch of the imagination for anyone involved. Especially if you've paid comp fees and you're not getting them back. Like I totally get it, but like, please prioritize these kids' health. Like they're not little robots that are meant for just like performing on stage for us. Like they are human beings that need to be cared for.
And we need to think of the repercussions of this too. Like you might think, oh, it's just a 2-minute dance, well, whatever, but this could actually have long-term implications. And was that 2-minute dance to get that sparkly trophy worth it? Right. Most of the time, no, it's not. Right. So you need to learn how to prioritize. And yes, there is a difference between that kid who uses, an excuse every other week and is missing a lot. But there are serious illnesses, there are serious injuries, and you have to allow that child to heal properly, because not allowing them is going to cause more problems down the road. Yeah. If you have a dancer who is chronically sick, and they keep dancing through all of this, and they're just popping Advil or Motrin or whatever to get through the day or the weekends, that leads to other things. You're talking dehydration, things like that.
That in the hospital.
I was just gonna say they could end up in the hospital, and like, was it worth it? Like,
Right.
was it worth it? This is not, I know dance is very important, but in the grand scheme of things, like
Yeah.
your child's health is way more important. And as a studio owner or teacher, you also have to recognize that. And if
Yeah.
you don't, that's a problem.
Agreed. So, yeah, I want to kind of wrap up a little bit here with just some things that I kind of came up with, and I want you to add in any of your own thoughts as well in terms of like longer term repercussions that your child can experience from staying in these type of environments or staying in these like kind of unhealthy cultural type situations. And so some of them, low self-esteem. So just in terms of how they always look at themselves, a damaging internal dialogue. And I kind of nodded to that when we were talking about corrections earlier. And, gosh, I could go on forever, but things like having peers do critiques and things like that, if it's not policed well, I don't think that
Right.
that in itself is a problem, but I think the way that it's presented and policed needs to be very closely monitored. And so, those words stay with the human, and there's a lot of documentation around that in terms of like people's own experiences where, a teacher said something to them one time and that replays in their head like 10 years later over and over again on repeat. Like it really has lasting impressions. Anxiety or depression, obsessive perfectionism. So if there's only emphasis placed on winning and not on progression or improvement in technique and other skills, that certainly can have a lasting effect. Eating disorders, if people are making comments about people's body or body types. Lasting orthopedic issues that have long-term consequences. So that's a whole other episode in and of itself. But
Right.
for all intents and purposes of this one, in terms of dancing while injured, that can result in a number of things that can really have long-term consequences on that child's developing body, which is so
Yes.
important to recognize. And then just, burnout and the loss of their love for dance, which are things that we've already kind of touched on. But anything else that you can think of to add to that list, because I think that those are the things that I want to highlight in terms of like parents who are listening that really had no idea what they were getting themselves into maybe when they started dance.
Yeah.
Right? So like these are all things that we can recognize are, maybe these can be the lasting effects of not pulling yourself or your student, your dancer,
Right.
from that environment if you feel like you're in that situation. So just to highlight some of those long-term repercussions.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Everything that you said. And I think, too, what we also need to remember is that, especially nowadays, kids, their risk for mental health issues
Yeah.
is huge. And it's skyrocketing every year. I mean, it is astounding when you hear the numbers. Girls, especially. So when you bring up things like eating disorders, anxiety issues, negative self-talk, that, you might think that this is just innocent and, oh, it's just dance. But like that does have a long-term effect. And when kids are already sort of bombarded by this because of social media and things going on at school
Yeah, we
and,
didn't even
and
touch
blah,
that.
blah, blah. Oh yeah. Like I don't even want to go there, but as they're dealing with that, it all compounds, and girls especially are at a much higher risk from suffering from any and all of those things. So you really need to be aware of what is happening. And you need to keep an open dialogue with your child too.
Yeah.
How many times do they get in the car and you're like, oh, how was dance? And you're like, it's fine. Like, okay, like we need to dig a little deeper, maybe form the question a little bit differently so that you can actually get like an answer instead of just like that automatic response. But, like I said, if there had to be a list, of when you're looking at a studio, like if you just like walk into the place and like you're going to get that feeling, like pay attention to that feeling, pay attention to the surroundings, even the name of the studio can kind of give you like a representation of like where their values are at, like where are they placing their values based on what they've decided to call themselves. Do they promote those values around the studio, in the classroom. Look at how everybody is interacting with each other. Even the front desk staff, if you can't get anybody's attention or no one's going to talk to you when you're trying to be a customer, how are they going to treat you when you actually are a customer? Like,
right.
that first interaction, like, they're trying to get you, like, that's like the honeymoon period,
Yeah,
right? Like,
they're
they're
trying to
like
get you
trying to roll out, they're trying to roll out all the stops, and they should be giving you like the red carpet treatment. But if they're going to ignore you, then what are they going to do once they have you? And they have, like, you really just need to pay attention to the surroundings. You need to sit and spend some time in the studio. You need to talk to other parents.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say.
You know, you really, and not just one or two.
Yeah.
Like, you need to talk to a lot of them in
At
different
levels,
groups.
like with dancers at different levels too. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, and I also say, like, if you can, go to competitions and see how they act there. Like, how are they presenting their dancers on stage? Are they dancing it to inappropriate songs? Are their costumes a little out of your comfort zone?
Yeah, now you're going into territory that we haven't even.
I'm going into like crazy,
so
but like if you, you know, if you want to try to see like what is toxic, like you have to kind of, what are your own values, and then you have to see what theirs are, and if they're not aligning, that's your first sign right there. If it's maybe one thing that doesn't bother you, okay, fine. But if you're like seeing all of these things and you're like, that is definitely not the place for you, probably.
If you have any questions about any of the things that we've talked about today, feel free to send us an email and, comment on our posts, join our Facebook community to continue the conversation. We would love to continue having dialogue with other parents on these issues, studio owners, teachers. The goal here, again, is not to cut down anything about the competition dance industry. It's really just to highlight things that parents should be aware of and to help really protect our dancers from any of the things that may have an impact on their long-term success. So thank you so much for listening today. We appreciate you, and we'll see you next time. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and learned something. Please be sure to follow or subscribe so you don't miss a thing. Also, make sure you head over to Instagram and YouTube and follow us there. Send us your listener questions, topic suggestions, and feedback at doctordancemompodcast@gmail.com. That's Doctor, fully written out, Dance Mom Podcast, also fully written out, @gmail.com. Thanks so much for listening.